On December 15, 1967, the Silver Bridge connecting Point Pleasant, West Virginia to Ohio collapsed into the icy waters of the Ohio River. 46 people died in less than 60 seconds. In the weeks before the collapse, dozens of locals reported seeing something in the sky. They described a winged figure with glowing red eyes watching from the darkness. Whether you believe in omens or not, one fact remains. West Virginia holds more abandoned towns per square mile than almost anywhere else in America. And the people who still live near these places have one piece of advice for outsiders: stay away. Number 10. Cass. Deep in the Allegheny Mountains sits a town where your mobile phone becomes useless. Your GPS sends you in circles. And the silence is so complete it feels unnatural. Cass was built by the West Virginia Pulp and Paper Company at the turn of the 20th century. By the 1920s, more than 2,000 people called it home. Timber workers and their families filled the streets. Children walked to school. Dogs barked in front yards. The company store did brisk business. Then the lumber ran out. The mill closed in 1960. Workers packed their belongings and left for jobs elsewhere. Cass was abandoned almost overnight. Today, you can still rent the original company houses. You can ride the old logging railroad up the mountain. But something about Cass feels deeply wrong. No children play in the streets. No dogs bark. The driveways sit empty. The houses stand preserved but lifeless, like a museum exhibit of a town that forgot to die completely. Part of the strangeness comes from the nearby Green Bank Observatory. Cass sits within the National Radio Quiet Zone, a federally mandated area where electronic signals are restricted to protect the radio telescope. Your phone will not work here. Your satellite navigation will fail or send you somewhere you did not intend to go. Visitors describe a creeping sense of disconnection. Cut off from the outside world, surrounded by empty houses that look like someone might return any moment. Locals who remember the old days say the mountain never wanted people here in the first place. The timber companies took what they wanted and left. Now the forest is slowly reclaiming what was always its own. Number 9. Grafton. Grafton began as a work camp for the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad in the 1850s. During the Civil War, both Union and Confederate forces occupied the town at different times, recognizing its strategic value as a rail hub. Today, Grafton is known for two things. It is the birthplace of Mother's Day, where Anna Jarvis first honored her own mother at a church service in 1908. It also houses both of West Virginia's national cemeteries, where thousands of soldiers from every American conflict lie buried in orderly rows. But Grafton is also known for something that cannot be buried. On the night of June 16, 1964, Robert Cockrell drove home along Riverside Drive. Cockrell worked as a reporter for the local newspaper, the Grafton Sentinel. Around 11 in the evening, his headlights swept across something standing in a clearing near the Tigart Valley River. The figure stood between 7 and 9 feet tall and perhaps 4 feet wide. Its skin appeared smooth and pale, almost like a seal. But the detail that made Cockrell slam his brakes was simpler and more disturbing. The creature had no head. It stood motionless, clearly alive, but making no sound at all. By the next morning, word had spread through Grafton. Other residents came forward with their own encounters. A towering white shape moving through brush along the riverbank, heavy footsteps crashing through the woods at night, and always that strange whistling sound that seemed to come from nowhere. Packs of teenagers and even adults gathered at the sighting location. They carried bats, crowbars, whatever weapons they could find. They searched the woods for nights on end. The creature was never found, never explained. The sighting simply stopped after a few weeks, leaving Grafton with a mystery that persists to this day. Number 8. Flatwoods. September 12, 1952. The height of the Cold War. Americans lived in genuine fear of Soviet attack. School children practiced hiding under their desks. Families built bomb shelters in their gardens. And in the small town of Flatwoods, something fell from the sky. At 7:15 in the evening, two brothers named Edward and Fred May were playing outside with their friend Tommy Heyer. They watched a bright object streak across the darkening sky and appear to land on a nearby hill, on property owned by a farmer named Bailey Fisher. The boys ran home and told their mother, Kathleen May. She gathered a small group including local National Guardsman Eugene Lemon, and they climbed the hill to investigate. What happened next would make national headlines and prompt a United States Air Force investigation. The group reached the hilltop and noticed a strange mist and a pungent metallic smell. Lemon shined his flashlight toward a pair of glowing lights he assumed were animal eyes. Instead, the beam revealed a figure that none of them could explain. It stood over 10 feet tall with a round red face and a pointed hood shape behind its head. It wore what appeared to be a dark pleated skirt or robe, and those glowing eyes stared directly at them. The creature made a hissing sound and glided toward the group. They ran. One of the boys wet himself in terror. Their dog fled with its tail between its legs and reportedly never fully recovered from the experience. The encounter was reported to local authorities and quickly reached the national press. The Air Force investigated as part of Project Blue Book, their official program for studying unidentified flying objects. They concluded the witnesses had seen a meteor and perhaps a barn owl, its eyes reflecting light in an unusual way. But the witnesses never accepted that explanation. Kathleen May went to her grave insisting that what she saw that night was no owl. Whatever landed on that West Virginia hilltop in 1952 remains unexplained. Number 7. Thurmond. At its peak, the town of Thurmond processed 95,000 train passengers every single day. Imagine the platforms packed with travelers, the hotels fully booked, the restaurants and saloons doing roaring business. In the early 20th century, Thurmond was one of the busiest rail hubs in America. The town was formally incorporated in 1900, and it was named for Confederate Captain William Thurmond, who had acquired 73 acres of land along the New River for just $20. The railroad transformed that cheap land into a gold mine. Coal from the surrounding mountains flowed through Thurmond by the trainload, and money followed. But Thurmond's prosperity depended entirely on steam locomotives. When American railroads switched to diesel engines, they no longer needed the coal and water stations that had made Thurmond essential. The town became obsolete almost overnight. Businesses closed, families moved away, and the grand hotels fell silent. Today, Thurmond's population hovers around 5 people. 5 residents govern an entire municipality that once served nearly 100,000 daily visitors. Most of the buildings stand empty, their windows dark, paint peeling. Vines climb the walls, trees push through cracked foundations. Nature is taking back the town, 1 year at a time. Visitors to Thurmond describe an overwhelming sense of absence. You can stand on the old platform and almost hear the ghost of steam whistles, the chatter of passengers, the bustle of a living town, but only almost. The silence that remains feels heavier than mere emptiness. Locals in surrounding areas speak of Thurmond with a mix of nostalgia and unease. Many believe the town is haunted by the thousands who pass through its station, leaving some fragment of themselves behind. Number 6. Kayford. Some towns die because the industry moved away. Kayford died because the industry ate the town itself. The small coal mining community of Kayford existed on Kayford Mountain for over 200 years. Generations of families lived and worked there. They had a general store, a school, a church. Children grew up knowing they would follow their fathers into the mines, just as their fathers had followed their grandfathers. Then came mountaintop removal mining. This technique does not send workers underground to extract coal. Instead, massive machines strip away the entire top of a mountain to reach the coal seams beneath. It is cheaper and requires fewer workers. It also destroys everything on the surface. the community of Kayford was displaced not by economics, but by the literal removal of the ground they lived on. The mining company bought out the residents, demolished the buildings, and carved away the mountain itself. Today, the site looks like a moonscape. Where forests once stood, bare rock and artificial plateaus stretch toward the horizon. Where homes once sheltered families, nothing remains but memories. But not quite nothing. The cemetery survived. The Kayford Community Cemetery sits on a small section of land that was never sold to the mining company. Visitors can still walk among the headstones, reading names and dates that stretch back to the 1800s. The dead of Kayford remain on their mountain, surrounded by the devastation that consumed everything else. Locals say the site feels cursed. The water in surrounding areas tests positive for heavy metals. The ground is unstable. Sinkholes open without warning where mine shafts collapse below. And on that small preserved hilltop, the graves of Kayford outnumber the living. Number 5. Matewan. Most small towns have a defining event in their history. For Matewan, that event was a massacre. On May 19, 1920, the quiet streets of this coal mining town erupted in the deadliest gunfight in American history. The conflict had been building for years. Coal miners across West Virginia were attempting to unionize, demanding safer working conditions and fair pay. The mining companies fought back with every tool available. They hired private security forces, most notoriously the Baldwin Felts Detective Agency, whose agents were little more than corporate mercenaries. They evicted union sympathizers from company housing. They brought in strikebreakers to replace any worker who complained. In Matewan, the company attempted to evict several mining families from their homes. The local sheriff, a man named Sid Hatfield, refused to allow it. He stood with the miners against the Baldwin Felts agents. On that May afternoon, the confrontation turned violent. When the shooting stopped, 10 people lay dead, 7 Baldwin Felts agents, the mayor of Matewan, Cable Testerman, and 2 unarmed miners caught in the crossfire. Sid Hatfield became a hero to working people across America. His defiance of corporate power inspired thousands, but his victory was short-lived. On August 1, 1921, Hatfield walked up the steps of the courthouse in Welch, West Virginia. He was there to stand trial on unrelated charges that most believed were manufactured by the mining companies. He never reached the courtroom door. Baldwin Felts agents shot him down on the courthouse steps. His friend Ed Chambers died beside him. Their wives watched the murders happen. The killing sparked the largest armed uprising in American history since the Civil War. 10,000 coal miners armed themselves and marched on Logan County to confront the mine owners and their private armies. For 5 days, open warfare raged across the West Virginia hills. Federal troops eventually intervened to stop the fighting. Matewan today is a quiet place. A museum tells the story of the massacre. Historic markers note where people died. But older residents still speak carefully about what happened here. The violence was not random. It was systematic. Corporate. The blood spilled in Matewan paid for the labor rights that workers enjoy today. And some say that debt has never been fully settled. Number 4. Weston. The Allegheny Lunatic Asylum stands on a hill above the town of Weston. It is the largest hand-cut stone building in North America. Some say it is the second largest in the entire world, after the Kremlin in Moscow. Construction began in 1858, though the Civil War delayed completion. The asylum accepted its first patients in 1864. The building was designed according to the most progressive psychiatric theories of its time. Dr. Thomas Kirkbride believed that mental illness could be treated through a combination of fresh air, meaningful work, and pleasant surroundings. His asylum designs featured long, staggered wings that maximized sunlight and ventilation. Each patient would have their own room. The grounds would include farms and gardens where patients could work outdoors. The Allegheny Lunatic Asylum was built to house 250 patients in these humane conditions. But demand for beds quickly outstripped capacity. Families desperate for help sent their relatives from across the region, and the asylum accepted them all. By the 1950s, the facility held 2,400 patients, nearly 10 times its intended capacity. patients slept in hallways. Violence became common in the overcrowded wards. The progressive treatments gave way to simpler methods of control. The asylum performed over 4,000 lobotomies during its operation. Doctors used what became known as the ice pick method, inserting a sharp instrument through the eye socket to sever connections in the brain. Many patients who entered healthy, committed for conditions like asthma, epilepsy, or simply for difficult personalities, left with permanent brain damage. Many never left at all. The conditions inside the asylum deteriorated for decades. Investigations revealed patients living in filth and suffering abuse from overworked and undertrained staff. The facility finally closed in 1994. By that time, over 2,000 people had died within its walls. Their bodies rest in a cemetery on the grounds, many in unmarked graves. Today, the Allegheny Lunatic Asylum operates as a tourist attraction. Visitors can take historical tours during the day or ghost hunting tours at night. Staff report constant paranormal activity, doors opening and closing on their own, voices in empty hallways, the sensation of being watched from the cells where patients once spent their final years. Many visitors have fled the building in terror, unable to complete their tours. Number 3. Harper's Ferry. Thomas Jefferson wrote in 1785 that Harper's Ferry was worth a trip across the Atlantic Ocean just to see. Here, the Potomac and Shenandoah rivers crashed together through a gap in the Blue Ridge Mountains. The town that grew up at this confluence became one of the most strategically important locations in American history. In 1859, the abolitionist John Brown led a raid on the Federal Armory at Harper's Ferry. His plan was to seize weapons and distribute them to enslaved people, sparking a massive uprising across the South. The raid failed. Brown was captured, tried, and hanged. But his action helped ignite the Civil War that would begin less than 2 years later. During that war, Harper's Ferry changed hands 8 times between Union and Confederate forces. Both sides recognized its value, controlling the river junction and the railroad that passed through. More than 100 people died in military action here during Brown's raid and the Battle of Harper's Ferry in 1862. Their blood soaked into the cobblestones that visitors still walk today. The town is now preserved as a National Historical Park. Brick buildings from the 1800s line the narrow streets. Churches and shops look much as they did during the Civil War. It would be charming if not for what visitors keep reporting. Tour guides speak of phantom soldiers marching down Shenandoah Street. A woman in period dress appears near St. Peter's Church and then seems to vanish when approached. At the old Confederate mass grave on the hill above town, visitors describe an oppressive sense of grief that has nothing to do with the peaceful scenery. Locals have learned to live with the strangeness. Some say a ghost guards the town spring, protecting a secret entrance to the caves that honeycomb the ground beneath Harper's Ferry. Others claim to see lights in windows of buildings they know to be empty. The town sits atop layers of violent history, and that history refuses to stay buried. Number 2. Lake Shawnee. Children once laughed here. Families once spent summer days riding the Ferris wheel and swimming in the spring-fed lake. The Lake Shawnee amusement park operated for over 60 years, from 1926 until 1988. Generations of West Virginians have happy memories of this place, but Lake Shawnee was built on blood-soaked ground. Some say the land itself remembers. In 1783, more than a century before the amusement park existed, a family named Clay settled on this property near what is now Princeton, West Virginia. The Clays were among the white settlers pushing into Native American territory. On an August day that year, members of the Shawnee tribe attacked the Clay homestead. Mitchell Clay's daughter, age 16, was tomahawked and scalped in the front yard. His 18-year-old son was killed the same way. A third child, also age 16, was captured alive. He was taken to a Shawnee settlement in Ohio and burned at the stake. Mitchell Clay survived only because he was away from home that day. Clay gathered a group of settlers and tracked down the raiding party. They killed several Shawnee warriors in revenge. The cycle of violence continued for years. All of it took place on the land that would later become an amusement park. In the 1980s, archaeologists from Marshall University excavated the Lake Shawnee property. They discovered Native American artifacts dating back thousands of years. More significantly, they found graves. 13 skeletal remains were excavated, mostly elderly people and young children. Researchers estimate the site may contain as many as 3,000 additional burials. The amusement park built atop this burial ground experienced tragedy almost from the beginning. A young girl died on the swing ride in 1966. 2 other children drowned in the lake during the park's operation. By 1988, the park had closed. Today, the rusted swing ride still hangs from its frame. The Ferris wheel stands frozen, its passenger cars swaying slightly in the wind. Visitors report seeing the swings move on their own, as if pushed by unseen hands. A little girl in a pink dress appears near the spot where a child died. Voices call out from the tree line around the abandoned attractions. Lake Shawnee has been named one of the most haunted locations in America. Paranormal investigators have recorded unexplained phenomena throughout the property. The current owners opened the park for special events, allowing visitors to experience the oppressive atmosphere for themselves. Most do not stay long. Number 1. Point Pleasant. Every dark road in West Virginia seems to lead eventually to Point Pleasant. This small town at the confluence of the Ohio and Kanawha rivers has experienced more documented tragedy and unexplained phenomena than any community its size should have to bear. The trouble goes back centuries. In 1774, the Battle of Point Pleasant marked a pivotal moment in colonial expansion into Native American lands. The Shawnee Chief Cornstalk led his warriors against Virginia militia at this spot. The battle was brutal and inconclusive, but it opened the door for white settlement of the Ohio Valley. 3 years later, Chief Cornstalk returned to Point Pleasant under a flag of truce. He came to warn the American colonists that other tribes were joining the British side in the Revolutionary War. Despite his peaceful intentions, American soldiers took Cornstalk prisoner. When a white soldier was killed outside the fort, an angry mob burst into Cornstalk's cell and murdered him along with his son and 2 other Shawnee prisoners. According to legend, Cornstalk's dying words were a curse on Point Pleasant. He vowed that tragedy would plague the town for 200 years. Whether you believe in curses or not, the history that followed is documented fact. In November 1966, something began appearing in the hills around Point Pleasant. Witnesses described a creature between 6 and 7 feet tall, with enormous wings and glowing red eyes. On November 12th, 5 men digging a grave at a cemetery near the Elk River saw it fly overhead. 3 days later, 2 young couples encountered it near the abandoned TNT storage area north of town. The creature chased their car at speeds over 100 miles per hour. More sightings followed throughout late 1966 and 1967. Locals dubbed the creature Mothman. Some thought it was an undiscovered animal. Others believed it was something supernatural. The sightings generated national news coverage. Point Pleasant became briefly famous for its monster. Then came December 15, 1967. The Silver Bridge had connected Point Pleasant to Gallipolis, Ohio since 1928. At 5 in the afternoon during rush hour traffic, the bridge was packed with vehicles. Christmas shoppers filled the cars heading home or to the stores across the river. At approximately 5:04 in the afternoon, a single eye-bar in the bridge's chain-link suspension system failed. Within seconds, the entire structure collapsed into the frigid Ohio River. 46 people died. 21 vehicles plunged into the water. Many bodies were never recovered. Some witnesses claimed to see Mothman flying over the bridge just before the collapse. Others said they spotted the creature on the bridge structure itself watching. In the days after the disaster, Mothman sightings stopped almost completely. Whatever had been haunting Point Pleasant seemed to vanish along with the bridge. Was Mothman an omen of disaster, A supernatural guardian trying to warn the town? Or simply a strange coincidence? An unknown creature whose presence happened to overlap with a structural failure? No one knows. The mystery has never been solved. Today, Point Pleasant embraces its dark history. A 12-foot-tall metal statue of Mothman stands in the center of town. A museum dedicated to the creature draws tourists from around the world. Every September, the town hosts the Mothman Festival, celebrating its most famous resident. But older locals tell a different story. They remember the terror of those sightings. They remember the screams and sirens the night the bridge fell. They remember carrying bodies from the river in the dark December cold. And some of them still see things in the sky above Point Pleasant. Things they do not report to newspapers or discuss with tourists. Chief Cornstalk's curse was supposed to last 200 years. That deadline passed in 1977. But ask anyone who lives in Point Pleasant whether the darkness has lifted. Watch their faces carefully as they decide how to answer. Then look up at the hills surrounding the town, where the old TNT bunkers still stand abandoned in the woods, where something walked among the trees 50 years ago, and where, on certain nights, some say it walks still.